What we call intuition can sometimes be pressure moving faster than awareness. When the system is activated, urgency can feel identical to intuition. Because ego rarely sounds arrogant, most of the time it sounds urgent. It says, decide now, figure this out, don't wait, make sure this works, get clarity before something goes wrong. And because the mind is active, because the emotion feels intense, because the internal pressure feels important, people assume it must be truth. But often what they call intuition is actually the nervous system trying to escape uncertainty. You can feel this in the body. The compulsive need to decide immediately, the inability to rest until an answer appears, the constant mental looping disguised as trying to gain clarity, the pressure to force certainty before the body has actually settled, the feeling that if the outcome resolves, the tension inside will finally disappear. Most people do not realize how often emotional pressure impersonates alignment, because urgency feels convincing, intensity feels meaningful, control feels intelligent. And over time, many people become so accustomed to internal pressure that they stop recognizing contraction altogether. But real intuition usually does not feel contracted. It does not demand immediate resolution. It does not force. Something inside may still feel uncertain, but there is less argument inside the experience, less grasping, less emotional compression. True intuition does not usually arrive as pressure. Pressure is usually the system trying to escape uncertainty. Ego is often misunderstood as the enemy, but ego is not a mistake. It is protective organization. At one point in life, it was intelligent. It helped create continuity, identity, stability. It organized experience into something manageable. Without it, many people would not have been able to function in difficult environments at all. The ego learns how to stay safe, how to maintain belonging, how to avoid overwhelm, how to preserve coherence. And because of this, control initially feels intelligent. It creates structure, predictability, orientation. But over time, something subtle begins to happen. Protection starts impersonating intuition. The system no longer simply responds to life. It starts trying to manage reality in advance. This is where many people become disconnected from themselves without realizing it. Because ego does not usually announce itself as fear, it feels like urgency, the pressure to resolve something immediately, the inability to stop thinking, the need to gain reassurance before moving forward, the fear of uncertainty, the need for answers now. The mind begins looping, searching, analyzing, rehearsing outcomes, not because clarity is actually arriving, but because the nervous system is trying to reduce internal tension. And this is why ego so often mistakes control for intelligence, because certainty temporarily feels safer than contact. But intuition feels different, usually much different. Intuition is often quieter, cleaner, less argumentative, less emotionally charged, less defensive. There may still be uncertainty, but there is also space around the uncertainty. Intuition does not usually scream over reality. It listens to it. And importantly, intuition does not always remove fear. Sometimes intuition leads directly toward what feels vulnerable, unfamiliar, or exposed. But intuition does not weaponize fear. It does not create internal aggression in order to force movement. Ego tries to protect you from discomfort. Intuition tries to keep you in contact with reality. And the deeper problem is not that people have egos. The deeper problem is that most people have spent so long organizing around protection that pressure itself begins to feel trustworthy. So they follow intensity instead of accuracy, urgency instead of contact, and over time, the nervous system loses the ability to distinguish between what feels important and what simply feels emotionally unresolved. This distortion does not stay internal. It begins shaping how people work, how they relate, how they pursue money, and even how they experience themselves. Because when ego becomes the dominant orientation, achievement slowly stops being about expression. it becomes self-protection. Success becomes a way to stabilize identity. Productivity becomes emotional regulation. People begin forcing outcomes not because the outcomes are truly aligned, but because uncertainty itself feels unsafe. They override exhaustion, ignore contraction, push past signals. Not necessarily because they are greedy or ambitious, but because achievement temporarily relieves internal instability. Many people are not pursuing success. They are trying to escape internal instability. And this is why even meaningful achievements can feel strangely empty afterward, because the achievement was not actually resolving the deeper tension. It was managing it temporarily. The same pattern appears in relationships. People begin attaching not just to other people, but to certainty itself. They need reassurance, predictability, control, and when uncertainty appears, the nervous system often interprets it as danger. This creates control dynamics, fear-based interpretation, projection, emotional management. People stop relating directly. Instead, they begin relating through protection. They stop seeing what is actually present and start reacting to what the nervous system fears might happen. This is why relationships often become distorted by old emotional patterns that have nothing to do with the current moment. The body continues patterns long after the mind understands them. Someone may intellectually know they are safe, while the nervous system continues organizing around fear, abandonment, rejection, or control. And when the nervous system becomes overwhelmed, something important happens internally. Ego becomes louder, not because intuition disappeared, but because pressure creates internal noise. The more emotionally overloaded the system becomes, the harder it is to hear quieter forms of intelligence. This is why many people lose contact with intuition during periods of high stress. Not because intuition abandoned them, but because survival patterns amplified themselves. Pressure narrows perception, urgency reduces accuracy, and forcing clarity often disconnects people from reality altogether. Because when someone becomes desperate for certainty, they stop listening. They start trying to control experience before fully contacting it. This where effort stops functioning as intelligence and begins functioning as distortion, which reflects the broader movement described in the introduction of the book. The mind tries to finalize conclusions too quickly, resolve uncertainty too quickly, predict outcomes too quickly. But intuition does not usually function through premature certainty. Ego wants clarity before movement. Intuition becomes clearer through movement, not through forcing reality into fixed conclusions, but through remaining in contact long enough for reality itself to respond. So the deeper question becomes, if urgency is not intuition, then how does intuition actually become perceptible? And this is where many people become confused, because they try to hear intuition while remaining organized around pressure. But intuition rarely becomes clear inside internal conflict. It becomes perceptible when conflict softens, when pressure relaxes, when the nervous system settles enough to stop trying to force reality into immediate conclusions. Intuition requires contact, not control. It emerges when identity stops trying to guarantee outcomes long enough for reality to actually be felt. This is why intuition often becomes clearer during moments of stillness, after surrender, after emotional exhaustion breaks the cycle of forcing, or during periods where the mind temporarily stops trying to dominate uncertainty. Because intuition is not usually constructed, it is revealed. Intuition is not the loudest voice inside you. It is what remains when internal conflict quiets. And importantly, this does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean abandoning discernment or pretending uncertainty feels comfortable. It means shifting from forcing clarity in advance to remaining accurate in contact, which is very different. Most people have been taught to live through certainty, to know before moving, to predict before trusting, to control before engaging. But aligned living is not certainty. It is not perfect decisions. It is not eliminating uncertainty. It is remaining accurate while reality unfolds. This reflects the deeper orientation introduced throughout the book, from imposing outcome to responding to feedback, from forcing clarity to staying in contact long enough for intelligence to emerge naturally. And this becomes difficult because many nervous systems are not organized around openness. They are organized around survival. The system prioritizes safety, control, prediction, certainty, not because something is wrong, but because at some point these patterns protected coherence. The problem is that survival-based organization often makes subtle intelligence difficult to perceive because survival amplifies urgency. It narrows attention. It prioritizes immediate resolution over deeper accuracy. And this is why many people cannot hear intuition clearly while emotionally activated, not because intuition disappeared, but because pressure distorts perception. The more the system contracts around fear, control, or urgency, the harder it becomes to perceive reality cleanly, which means alignment is not really about learning how to force better outcomes. It is learning how to stop distorting perception through pressure. And as pressure softens, something surprising begins to happen. Life itself becomes easier to hear, not because all uncertainty disappears, but because the nervous system no longer needs to overpower reality in order to feel safe inside it. And maybe this changes the way you relate to clarity itself, because most people have spent their lives trying to force clarity before allowing themselves to relax, as though certainty must arrive first, before the body is allowed to soften. But what if that pattern itself is part of the distortion? What if the pressure to know immediately is the very thing preventing deeper intelligence from emerging? Maybe the question is not, how do I force clarity? Maybe the question is, what inside me becomes afraid when clarity does not arrive immediately? Because often what people call confusion is actually the nervous system struggling with uncertainty. The mind begins grasping for answers, trying to predict, trying to control, trying to stabilize itself through conclusions. But intuition rarely emerges through grasping. It becomes perceptible when pressure softens enough for reality to actually be heard. Because intuition often appears after pressure stops trying to control the future. And this changes the relationship with uncertainty itself. Uncertainty no longer has to mean danger. Not knowing no longer has to mean failure. Sometimes clarity is not absent. Sometimes it is simply quieter than the internal noise trying to overpower it. And when the nervous system no longer needs to force certainty, something begins reorganizing naturally. The body softens, attention widens, reality becomes easier to feel directly, and movement becomes cleaner because it is no longer organized around escape. You may not need to force your life forward as much as your system believes. Sometimes clarity returns the moment protection no longer has to impersonate intelligence.